My name is Simone Hayes, and 3 months ago, I was the kind of woman who actually believed in fairy tales. I was 26 years old, working as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized advertising agency, and I'd spent 5 years of my life loving a man I genuinely believed loved me back. I wore my heart on my sleeve, I believed the best in people, and I thought that loyalty and devotion were enough to build a life on. I was wrong about all of it. The story begins one Friday night in June at a bar called the Rusty Anchor, deep in the heart of D.C.'s trendy Navy Yard neighborhood. It was supposed to be a celebration. Derek, my boyfriend, had finally saved up enough money for the ring we'd been talking about for months. We were going to announce our engagement to his friends, maybe set a date, and start planning the future we'd dreamed of since we were 21. I remember everything about that night with a painful clarity. The way the neon sign for the local IPA projected colored shadows onto the wooden tables, the heavy smell of stale peanuts and old fryer oil, the sound of laughter that would soon become the soundtrack to my destruction. Derek looked really handsome that night in the navy blue button-down shirt I'd bought him for his birthday. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his green eyes sparkled with what I thought was excitement for our future. I was wearing a white summer dress, one he'd complimented before, and I'd spent an hour doing my makeup, wanting to look perfect for our special announcement. We arrived at 8 o'clock and found his two best friends already there, Marcus Tate and Sean Bellamy. I'd known both of them for years. I'd cooked them dinner, remembered their birthdays, listened to their dating problems, and considered them the brothers I never had. "Well, well, well, if it isn't the happy couple," Marcus called out as we approached their booth. He was a tall, gangly man with prematurely thinning hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Derek's been texting us all day about some big news." Sean grinned and raised his pint. "About time, man. 5 years is long enough to keep any girl waiting." Sean was shorter than Marcus, loud and built like a fireplug, with an aggressive personality that made waitresses nervous and bartenders wary. I slid into the booth next to Derek, my heart hammering with anticipation. This was it, the moment we'd been building toward for half a decade. I reached for his hand under the table, expecting him to squeeze it the way he always did. Instead, he pulled it away. "Actually, guys," Derek said, his voice strangely tight, "that's what I wanted to talk to you about." A cold knot settled in my stomach. The way he said it, the way he wouldn't look me in the eye, the way his shoulders were hunched like he was preparing for a battle, everything felt wrong. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice weaker than I intended. Derek finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, something that looked almost like pity. "Simone, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I'm just not sure about this whole marriage thing." The words hit me like a physical blow. The noise of the bar seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. "What?" I whispered. "I mean, 5 years is a long time, and we're still young. Maybe we rushed into this whole engagement idea. Maybe we should slow down, figure out what we really want." Marcus and Sean exchanged a look across the table. I caught it, that quick glance that said they knew this was coming. They knew, and I didn't. "Derek," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "We've talked about this. We've been planning it for months. You said you were ready. You said you wanted to spend your life with me." "I know what I said," he countered, his voice taking on a sharp tone of irritation. "But saying something and feeling it are two different things, right?" The cruelty in his tone was like ice water in my veins. This wasn't the man who had whispered, "I love you," to me that very morning. This wasn't the man who had held me while I cried over losing a client last year, who had promised me we'd face everything together. "Besides," Sean chimed in, leaning forward with a smug smile, "you two have been together since college. Don't you think you should see what else is out there before you settle down?" "Exactly," Marcus added. "Plenty of fish in the sea. Why tie yourself down to the first one you caught?" They were talking about me like I wasn't even there, like I was an object, a burden, something you discard when it's no longer convenient. "Guys," I said, trying to inject some lightness into the conversation, trying to salvage something from this nightmare. We love each other. That's what matters, right? Love conquers all. All three of them looked at me, and then something happened that I still replay in my nightmares. Derek started to laugh. Not a kind laugh, not a loving chuckle, but a cold, mocking sound that cut through me like broken glass. "Love," he said, shaking his head. "You know what, Simone? If you were, actually pretty, I might marry you." The world stopped. Everything, the music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, it all just paused. I felt like I was falling through space, through time, through the foundation of everything I had ever believed about myself in my life. "What did you say?" I whispered. "I said if you were actually pretty, I might marry you," Derek repeated, his voice louder now, playing to his audience of friends. "I mean, look around. Look at the women in here, and then look at yourself." Marcus burst out laughing. "That's harsh, man, but fair. I mean, Simone's cool and everything, but she's not exactly model material, right?" Sean joined in, his voice gaining confidence. "Derek, you could do way better. You're a good-looking guy with a great job. You don't have to settle." Settle. The word hung in the air like poison gas. After 5 years, after all the promises, plans, and dreams, I was something he would be settling for. That's not true," I said, my voice cracking, despite my efforts to stay strong. "Derek, you don't mean that. You can't." But when I looked at his face, I saw the truth. He meant it. Every single word. And worse than that, he was enjoying it. He was enjoying watching me crumble in front of his friends, enjoying the way they laughed at my expense, enjoying the power he held over my heart. "Come on, Simone." His voice took on that condescending tone men use when they want to make you feel small. "You have to know you're not the best-looking girl I've been with. I mean, remember Layla from college? Remember how guys would turn their heads when she walked by? You've never had that effect on anyone." Layla, his ex-girlfriend from sophomore year. The one he'd claimed meant nothing. The one he'd sworn he'd forgotten. The comparison was deliberate, designed to cut as deeply as possible. And it worked. "That's cold, bro," Marcus said, but he was still smiling. "True, but cold." "Sometimes the truth hurts," Sean added, "but it's better to be honest now than to wake up in 10 years wondering, what if?" They continued talking about me as if I were a used car they were considering buying, weighing my features as points on a pros and cons list. My nose was too wide. My smile was crooked. I was too skinny. I didn't have enough curves. Every observation was thrown out with a casual cruelty, as if they were discussing the weather. I sat in that booth in the white dress I'd chosen, because Derek once said it made me look like an angel, listening to the man I loved catalog every physical flaw he had apparently been logging for 5 years. The man who had seen me without makeup countless mornings, who had held me when I was sick, who had traced every inch of my body with reverent hands. That man was now explaining to his friends why I wasn't good enough to marry. The worst part wasn't even the words themselves. It was the laughter, the way they fed off each other's cruelty, building it higher and higher until I felt like I was drowning in it. The way other customers in the bar started to notice, turning to stare at the girl being systematically torn down at the booth. "You know what I think?" Marcus said, leaning back in his chair like a king on his throne. "I think you should just break up with her tonight. Rip the Band-Aid off all at once. She'll cry for a while, but she'll get over it. And you'll be free to find someone who actually deserves you. Someone who's a total knockout," Sean added. "Someone who makes other guys jealous instead of confused about what you're doing with her." They laughed again, and this time, Derek laughed with them. The sound was like glass shattering inside my chest. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember gathering my purse or walking toward the door. All I remember is the sudden clarity that came with absolute devastation. The realization that the life I had built, the future I had planned, the love I had believed in, it was all a lie. I was halfway to the exit when I heard Derek yell my name. "Simone, wait! Don't be dramatic! Come back and finish your drink!" I turned around slowly. The whole bar was watching now, dozens of strangers witnessing my humiliation. Derek was sitting there with his friends, looking annoyed rather than apologetic, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Don't be dramatic," I repeated, my voice ringing in the suddenly quiet space. "You just spent 10 minutes explaining to your friends why I'm too ugly to marry you, and I'm being dramatic?" "I was just being honest," he said defensively. "I thought you could handle honesty. I thought that's what you wanted from me." Honesty. As if honesty were a noble virtue instead of a weapon he had used to publicly shatter me, as if telling the truth gave him the right to be cruel. "You're right," I said, and my voice was steady now, quiet in a way that surprised me. "Yes, I want honesty. So let me be honest with you, Derek. You are a coward, a pathetic, cruel coward who doesn't have the decency to break up with someone in private. You had to do it here, in front of your friends, so they could cheer you on and make you feel like a real man." His face flushed red. "Hold on a minute. No, I'm not finished." The words poured out of me now, 5 years of repressed frustrations and ignored red flags finally finding a voice. "You want to know what I think? I think you're terrified. Terrified of commitment, terrified of growing up, terrified of being seen as the small, insecure man you really are. So you have to sink me to raise yourself up. You have to make me the problem so you don't have to face the fact that you are the one who isn't ready for marriage." The bar was deathly silent now. Even the music seemed to have stopped. "And your friends," I continued, looking at Marcus and Sean. "You're even worse. You sit there laughing at someone else's pain because it makes you feel better about your own miserable lives. Marcus, you've been single for 3 years because no woman can stand your passive-aggressive attitude for more than a month. And Sean, your girlfriend cheated on you twice last year, and you took her back both times because you're too desperate to be alone." Both men's faces had gone pale. I had hit a nerve, exposing truths they probably never admitted even to themselves. "So, congratulations," I said, turning back to look at Derek. "You're free. Free to find someone prettier, someone who won't challenge you or expect you to be a decent human being. I hope she makes you very happy." I turned to leave again, but this time, Derek stood up. "Simone, you can't just walk out. We need to talk about this like adults." I stopped without turning around. "Adults?" I said. "Adults don't humiliate the people they claim to love in front of a room full of strangers. Adults don't spend 5 years with someone they think is too ugly for them. Adults have something you clearly lack: basic human decency." And then I walked out of the Rusty Anchor and into the warm summer night, leaving behind 5 years of my life and every naive belief I had ever held about love, loyalty, and the kindness of people. I cried all the way home. I cried in my car, I cried in my apartment. I cried until my eyes swelled shut and my chest ached from sobbing. I cried for the woman I had been, trusting, hopeful, foolishly in love. I cried for the future that had died in that booth, for the kids I'd imagined having with Derek, for the house we'd planned to buy, for the life that would never exist. But when I woke up the next morning, something had changed. The tears were gone, replaced by something harder, colder, infinitely more dangerous. I was done crying. I was done being the victim in Derek Thorne's story. It was time to write my own. The first few weeks after that night were a blur of pain and planning. I took sick leave from work, telling my concerned coworkers I had the flu. In reality, I was experiencing a different kind of illness. The sickening process of seeing your entire life clearly for the first time. I spent hours dissecting every moment of our relationship, looking for signs I'd missed, patterns I'd ignored. They were there, of course. They had always been there. The way Derek would joke about my appearance when he'd been drinking. The way he'd encourage me to wear makeup even when we were just staying in. The way he would suggest that maybe I wanted to join a gym or try a new hairstyle or consider contacts instead of glasses. I had interpreted all of it as affection, as a boyfriend wanting me to look my best. Now I saw it for what it truly was, a man slowly and methodically chipping away at my self-confidence, conditioning me to believe I wasn't good enough so I would be grateful for any scraps of affection he tossed my way. The manipulation had been masterful in its subtlety. During those weeks of isolation, I learned things about myself that 5 years with Derek had caused me to forget. I learned that I was smart, not just academically, but strategically smart. I learned that I had a capacity for patience that bordered on the supernatural, and I learned that somewhere underneath the conflict-avoidant, people-pleasing woman I had become, there was someone much stronger, someone who was deeply angry. My mother called repeatedly during this period, sweet, well-meaning mom who had always adored Derek, who had been planning our wedding in her head since we started dating. "Honey, are you sure you don't want to talk to him?" she'd ask during our brief phone calls. "He's called here 4 times looking for you. He sounds so regretful. Maybe you just need to work through this rough patch." I never told her exactly what happened that night. How could I explain to my mother that the man she had welcomed into our family, the man she had bought Christmas gifts for and invited to Sunday dinner, had publicly enumerated all the reasons why I was too ugly to be loved by him? Some humiliations are too deep to share, even with the people who love you most. "We're over, Mom," I would say, and change the subject. But Derek didn't give up so easily. After a week of unanswered calls, he started showing up at my apartment. I would watch from my window as he stood on the sidewalk, sometimes for hours, occasionally yelling up at my building that he was sorry, that we needed to talk, that I was being unreasonable. The sorry sounded hollow. The need to talk sounded manipulative, and the accusation that I was being unreasonable. That made me smile. A cold, sharp smile that would have terrified the old Simone. His friends started contacting me too. Marcus sent a long text explaining that they had all been drinking that night, that they didn't mean the things they said, that I should give Derek another chance. Sean left voicemails that grew increasingly frustrated with my silence, eventually accusing me of being too dramatic and unforgiving. The audacity was breathtaking. The same men who had laughed at my pain now wanted to lecture me about forgiveness. They wanted me to absolve them of their cruelty so they could go back to seeing themselves as good guys who just made a small mistake. I deleted every message without replying. 3 weeks after that night at the Rusty Anchor, something interesting happened. I was at the Whole Foods with dark sunglasses and a baseball cap, trying to go unnoticed, when I overheard a conversation that changed everything. "I hear Derek Thorne got dumped," one woman was saying to her friend as they examined apples in the produce section. "Can you believe it? Such a catch, back on the market." "Seriously? What happened?" her friend replied. "His girlfriend couldn't handle him wanting to keep his options open. Apparently she got all clingy and possessive when he suggested they slow down. You know how some women get. Hit a certain age and suddenly they're desperate to get married." I stood there in the cereal aisle, listening as my story was rewritten in real time. In Derek's version, I was the villain. I was the desperate, clingy girlfriend who couldn't respect his need for space. The humiliation, the cruelty, the deliberate destruction of my self-esteem, none of it existed in his narrative. That night, I sat in my apartment and faced a choice. I could continue to hide, letting Derek control the story, allowing him and his friends to paint me as the bitter ex who couldn't handle the truth. I could move, start over somewhere else, and spend the rest of my life as the victim of his cruelty. Or I could do something else entirely. I opened my laptop and started researching. Knowledge, I discovered, is the most powerful weapon there is. For the next month, I became a student of human psychology, of social dynamics, of the art of influence and persuasion. I read books on manipulation tactics. I studied cases of psychological warfare. I learned about the subtle ways people can be guided toward their own destruction. I wasn't planning anything violent or illegal. That would have been too simple, too crude. What I was planning was far more elegant. I was going to let Derek Thorne destroy himself. I was just going to create the conditions that made it inevitable. The wonderful thing about truly narcissistic people is how predictable they are. They have patterns, weaknesses, blind spots that can be exploited by someone patient enough to wait and smart enough to see them. Derek was no exception. Through careful observation, and yes, I admit, a little light social media stalking, I knew he had been telling people we broke up because I gave him an ultimatum: marriage or nothing. He was painting himself as a victim of my unrealistic expectations, a free spirit crushed by the demands of a controlling woman. The story made him look sympathetic while making me look desperate. It was perfect for him, and it told me everything I needed to know about his psychology. Derek needed to be seen as the victim in every situation. He required external validation to function, and most importantly, he had zero tolerance for public shame. I also learned about his family situation, information I had somehow never fully processed during our 5 years together. His mother, Denise, was a deeply religious woman who had raised Derek and his sister after their father left when Derek was 12 years old. She was the kind of person who believed in the fundamental goodness of people, who couldn't imagine that someone she loved could be deliberately cruel. She had always liked me. She had always treated me like a daughter. Throughout our relationship, she often mentioned how excited she was for us to get married, how much she longed for grandchildren. She was, in many ways, more invested in our relationship than Derek ever was. His sister Chloe was younger, 22, still in college, and struggling with anxiety and depression. She had looked up to Derek her whole life, seeing him as her protector, her role model. The thought that her beloved older brother could be capable of cruelty would devastate her. They were good people who loved a man who was unworthy of their love. Under normal circumstances, I would have felt terrible about involving them in my plans, but these were not normal circumstances, and I was not the same person I had been before that night at the Rusty Anchor. Besides, I didn't plan to hurt them. I planned to open their eyes. The plan slowly, carefully began to take shape. It was important that nothing could be traced back to me, that every step looked like the natural consequence of Derek's own choices and character flaws. I would merely give things a nudge. Phase 1 was information gathering. I needed to fully understand Derek's current situation, where he worked, who he spent time with, his routines, his habits, his vulnerabilities. This proved easier than expected. Derek was not careful with his social media privacy settings. His Instagram was public. His Facebook posts were visible to friends of friends, and he had a tendency to constantly check in to places, broadcasting his movements to anyone who bothered to pay attention. I learned that he'd gotten a promotion at his job. He was a sales rep at a medical device firm and was now making significantly more money than when we were together. Money he was spending on a new wardrobe, expensive dinners, and frequent nights out with Marcus and Sean. He was also dating, or rather trying to. His social media showed a string of first and second dates with different women, each younger and more conventionally attractive than me. None seemed to stick around long, suggesting that Derek's charming public persona wasn't enough to hide his true nature from perceptive women. But he was certainly working hard to find someone, posting photos that showed him at art galleries, wine tastings, and trendy restaurants, clearly trying to portray himself as cultured and successful. The desperation was obvious to anyone who knew how to look for it. Perfect. Phase 2 was establishing my new identity. I couldn't execute my plan as the heartbroken ex everyone expected me to be. I needed to become someone entirely different, someone self-assured, mysterious, successful, and utterly indifferent to Derek Thorne's existence. I started with my appearance, not because I believed Derek's cruel assessment of my looks, but because I understood the power of transformation. I joined an expensive gym and hired a personal trainer. I bought new clothes, styles I'd never tried before, bolder, more confident, more deliberately striking. I had my hair cut and dyed by a stylist who cost more per session than I used to spend on clothes in a month. The changes were subtle at first, but the cumulative effect was dramatic. I looked like a woman who had her life under control, who had reinvented herself after a setback, who had moved up and onward in the world. I also changed jobs. The marketing position I'd held during my relationship with Derek was fine, but it wasn't impressive. It didn't give me the kind of status and connections I would need for what I was planning. Through a combination of networking, aggressive interviewing, and frankly, my new look and confidence, I landed a role at one of the city's most prestigious public relations agencies. The job came with a significant salary increase, an impressive title, and most importantly, access to people and resources that would prove invaluable in the coming months. By the time I was ready to implement Phase 3, 2 months had passed since that night at the Rusty Anchor. 2 months since I had been Simone Hayes, the plain girlfriend who wasn't pretty enough to marry. Now I was Simone Hayes, successful PR executive, a woman of mystery, a phoenix risen from the ashes of someone else's cruelty. It was time to let Derek Thorne see what he had lost. The charity gala was perfect. Exactly the kind of high-profile event where appearances mattered more than substance. The fundraiser for Children's National Hospital drew attendees from the city's most influential people, and as the newest hire at Sterling & Associates, I was not only invited, but tasked with managing the media relations for the event. I knew Derek would be there. His company was one of the sponsors, and he had posted about it on social media weeks earlier, clearly excited about networking with potential clients in such an elegant setting. I arrived fashionably late in a black designer gown that cost half a month's salary but was worth every penny. The transformation I had undergone in the past months wasn't just physical. I moved differently. I now carried myself with the kind of quiet confidence that made people turn their heads and wonder who I was. The ballroom was everything you'd expect from a high-stakes charity event. Elegant decor, soft lighting, servers circulating with champagne and canapes, and dozens of people in expensive evening wear networking with calculated intensity. I spent the first hour genuinely working, managing my responsibilities, coordinating with photographers, and ensuring our client's message was effectively communicated. But I was also watching, waiting for the right moment. I saw Derek before he saw me. He was standing by the bar with 2 men I didn't recognize, likely potential clients. He looked good, I had to admit. His tuxedo fit him perfectly. His hair was immaculately styled, and he had that easy charm that had drawn me to him all those years ago. But now I could see things that had escaped me before. The way his eyes constantly scanned the room, looking for someone more important to talk to. The way his smile never quite reached his eyes when he thought no one was looking. The subtle signs of insecurity manifesting as overcompensation. He was trying so hard to be impressive that it was almost sad. When he finally spotted me, the reaction was everything I had hoped for and more. His face cycled through a series of expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, confusion, recognition, and something that might have been desire. I watched him excuse himself from his conversation and begin navigating the room toward me. I pretended not to notice, continuing my discussion with the event photographer while tracking his progress out of the corner of my eye. Simone. I turned slowly, as if surprised to see him. Derek, hi. For a moment, he simply stared. I could see him trying to reconcile the woman standing before him with the person he had left sobbing at the Rusty Anchor. This version of me didn't fit his narrative. This version of me looked like someone who had moved on, moved up, and definitely hadn't spent the last 2 months pining for him. He started, and then seemed to lose the word. Thank you, I said simply, not helping him finish the sentence. How are you? I'm fine. Great, actually. Really good. He was repeating himself, something he only did when he was nervous. I've been trying to reach out to you, to talk about things. Oh, yeah. I sipped my champagne, letting my eyes wander around the room as if his presence wasn't particularly interesting to me. I've been pretty busy lately. Busy with what? The question came out sharper than he probably intended. There was a touch of possessiveness in his voice that once would have made me feel guilty for worrying him. Now it only made me smile. Work, mostly. I changed jobs a few months ago. I'm with Sterling & Associates now. His eyes widened. Sterling & Associates was a well-known, prestigious firm in the city. The kind of company that only hired the best and brightest. The kind of job that came with status, money, and connections. That's incredible, he said, and I could hear the wheels turning in his head. I had no idea you were looking for a new spot. There's a lot you don't know about me, Derek. There always has been. The comment hit its mark. He shifted uncomfortably, clearly remembering some of the things he'd said that night about how well he knew me, how predictable I was. Simone, I've been thinking about what happened between us. I think maybe I was, rash. Rash? I interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Is that what we call it now? He had the decency to look embarrassed. I was drunk, and the guys were, you know how they can be. I said things I didn't mean. This was his chance, his opportunity to offer me a genuine apology, to show true remorse for the cruelty he had displayed. If he had proven to me that he understood the depth of what he had done and was truly sorry, my plans might have ended right there. Instead, he said, I think we should try again. I've missed you. I've missed you. Not I was wrong, not I was cruel and you deserved better. Just, I've missed you, as if my feelings about what happened were irrelevant. That's sweet, I said, my voice warm but not encouraging. But I'm dating someone now. I wasn't, of course, but Derek didn't need to know that. His face instantly changed. The confident expression was replaced by something harder, more familiar, the look he got when things didn't go his way, when he felt entitled to something he was being denied. Already? He asked. It's only been 2 months. It's been 10 weeks, I corrected, and some people don't need years to figure out what they want. The barb landed perfectly. His jaw tightened, and I could see him fighting the urge to say something he might regret. Who is it? He demanded. No one you know. I glanced around the room theatrically. He should be around here? He had to take a call, actually, but he'll be back soon. This was a lie, of course, but a necessary one. Let Derek spend the rest of the night wondering which one of the successful, attractive men at the gala was dating his ex-girlfriend. Let him imagine me laughing with someone else, being appreciated by someone else, being desired by someone who didn't think I needed to be prettier to deserve love. Simone, please, can we at least talk privately? There are things I need to say to you. Before I could answer, a familiar voice cut into our conversation. Simone, there you are. I turned to see my colleague, Julian Vance, approaching. He was one of the firm's senior partners, a handsome man in his 30s who had been nothing but professional with me since I started working there. But he was also charming, successful, and exactly the kind of man who would make Derek feel inadequate. The timing was perfect. Julian, I said warmly, I was just talking to an old friend, Derek Thorne. This is Julian Vance, one of the partners at my firm. The two men shook hands, and I watched Derek measure his competition. Julian was taller, better dressed, smoother, and he exuded the kind of quiet confidence that comes from genuine success rather than desperate ambition. Vance? Derek repeated. As in Sterling and Associates? Guilty, Julian said with an easy smile. Simone has been a tremendous addition to our team. We're lucky to have her. I watched the words hit Derek like physical punches. There was the proof that other people valued me, that I was succeeding without him, that maybe, just maybe, he had made a terrible mistake. Well, I said, placing my hand lightly on Julian's arm, we should find our table. I think they're about to start dinner. Of course. Julian offered me his arm like a perfect gentleman. It was a pleasure meeting you, Alex. Derek, I corrected softly. His name is Derek. Right. My apologies, Derek. As we walked away, I could feel Derek's eyes burning into my back. I knew he was watching the way Julian's hand rested on my lower back as he guided me through the crowd, the way other people respectfully nodded to Julian as we passed, the way I fit so naturally into this world of success and sophistication. I also knew that everything he was feeling, the jealousy, the regret, the desperate need to reclaim what he had discarded, was exactly what I intended him to feel. Phase 3 was complete. The seed had been planted. In the following weeks, I carefully cultivated Derek's growing obsession with winning me back. It was surprisingly easy. All I had to do was live my life, my new, improved life, with strategic visibility, and let his imagination do the rest. I made sure I was seen in the right places, at the right events, with the right people. Not obsessively, not obviously, but just enough so the information would trickle back to him through mutual acquaintances and social media. A picture here of me at an art gallery opening. A casual mention there about my promotion at work. little breadcrumbs that painted a picture of someone who was thriving. The wonderful thing about social media is that it allows you to construct a narrative with surgical precision. Every post was calculated to show a woman who was confident, successful, and utterly uninterested in looking backward. I shared photos of weekend getaways to South Carolina's coast, paid for by my new salary, dinners at expensive restaurants, sometimes alone, which actually looked more mysterious than sad. And professional achievements. The Mauricean account I landed was genuinely impressive. Meanwhile, through careful observation of his social media and strategic conversations with mutual friends, I tracked Derek's descent into what could only be described as a mild obsession. His dating life, which had looked so promising in the first few weeks after our breakup, began to falter. The string of young, pretty girls who had briefly appeared in his posts simply vanished. According to Sarah, a mutual friend who remained blissfully ignorant of my strategic interest in Derek's personal life, he had become increasingly difficult to please. "It's the weirdest thing," she told me over one of our coffee dates. "He keeps finding fault with every girl he meets. Too shallow, too boring, not enough ambition. It's like he's comparing everyone to some impossible standard." I nodded sympathetically while internally celebrating. The impossible standard was me, or rather, the idealized version of me that now existed in his memory, enhanced by loss and regret. "Maybe he's just not ready to date again," I suggested innocently. "Breakups can be tough, especially when you realize you made a mistake." "He made a mistake?" Sarah asked, leaning forward with interest. "I always thought you two were perfect for each other. I never understood why you broke up." This was my opportunity to begin reshaping the narrative, to plant seeds of doubt about Derek's version of events. "You know, I really don't like talking about it," I said, lowering my voice to that conspiratorial whisper that makes people lean in closer. "But let's just say Derek's recollection of what happened might be a little selective." I didn't elaborate. I didn't give specifics. I simply left that tantalizing insinuation hanging in the air, knowing Sarah's curiosity would do the rest. Within days, I was certain she would be asking other mutual friends what they knew about our breakup, comparing stories, looking for inconsistencies. The rumor mill was now working in my favor, but the real breakthrough came when I orchestrated what appeared to be a chance encounter at the Whole Foods, where Derek shopped every Sunday morning. I'd learned his routine through his Instagram stories. He was frustratingly predictable, posting photos of his Sunday meal prep sessions. I timed my arrival perfectly, showing up in the produce section just as he was selecting greens with the concentrated intensity of someone trying to prove he has his life together. "Derek!" I chirped, feigning surprise. "What a coincidence!" He spun around so fast he nearly dropped the bag of organic kale he was examining. "Simone, hi, how are you?" "I'm wonderful," I said. And I meant it. "Just grabbing a few things for dinner tonight." I watched his eyes scan my appearance. Casual but expensive jeans, a silk blouse that cost more than I used to spend on our anniversary dinners, and the confidence that came from knowing I looked great without trying too hard. "Dinner for two?" he asked, trying to sound casual. I murmured non-committally, neither confirming nor denying, letting him wonder. "Listen," he said, completely abandoning his vegetables. "I know this might sound crazy, but I've been thinking about you so much lately, about us, about what we had." "Oh yeah." I selected a perfect avocado, testing its ripeness with the kind of casual focus that suggested his confession wasn't particularly earth-shattering news. "I think I was an idiot, Simone. I think I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me." This was the closest thing to an apology I had received from him, and it was still entirely focused on his loss rather than my pain. Still no acknowledgement of his cruelty. No recognition of the humiliation he had subjected me to. "We all make choices," I said simply. "The important thing is to learn from them." "But what if I want to unmake some of those choices? What if I want to try again?" I looked up at him, and then I really looked, with the kind of compassionate expression you might give a child asking for something impossible. "Oh, Derek," I said softly. You can't unmake choices. You can only live with the consequences. The words struck him like a physical blow. I could see it in the way his face fell, the way his shoulders slumped slightly. So that's it? We're just done forever? We were done the night you decided to entertain your friends by listing all the reasons why I wasn't good enough for you, I said, my voice still soft, but now with a steel edge. Everything else is just details. For a moment, I thought he might genuinely acknowledge what he had done. I saw something flicker in his face that might have been genuine remorse, but then his defensive walls slammed back up. I was drunk, Simone. People say stupid things when they're drunk. You know that's not how I really felt about you. Actually, I said, I think that's exactly how you felt about me. Alcohol doesn't create thoughts, Derek. It just removes the filter that normally keeps us from voicing them. I could see him searching for another excuse, another way to minimize what he had done, but before he could speak, I continued. The sad thing is, you probably genuinely believe you loved me, but love doesn't mock. Love doesn't humiliate. Love doesn't invite an audience to witness someone's destruction. What you felt for me might have been affection or habit or convenience, but it wasn't love. The words hung between us like a challenge. He could either accept the truth of what I was saying or continue to live in his self-deception. I already knew which he would choose. That's not fair, he said. You're painting me as some kind of monster. I'm not a monster, Simone. I'm just a guy who made a mistake. Some mistakes are too big to take back, I replied. Some mistakes reveal who a person really is beneath all their careful pretense. I moved to walk away, but he grabbed my arm, not aggressively, but desperately. Please, he said, can't we at least try to be friends? I miss having you in my life. I looked at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. Friends? I repeated. Do you think we could be friends, Derek? Do you think you could be happy for me when I succeed? Could you celebrate my achievements without feeling diminished? Could you watch me be loved by someone else without trying to sabotage it? He opened his mouth to answer, but I raised my free hand to stop him. Don't answer that. We both know the truth. You don't want to be my friend. You want to alleviate your guilt by maintaining some connection to me, some evidence that you're not the villain in this story. But I'm not responsible for managing your feelings about what you did. That's your job now. I gently pulled my arm from his grasp. I hope you find what you're looking for, Derek. I really do. But you won't find it with me. As I walked away, I could feel his eyes tracking me. I knew he was watching me load my groceries into my car, probably noticing the expensive handbag, the confident way I moved through the world, the obvious signs that I was doing just fine without him. And I knew that everything he was feeling, the regret, the loss, the growing certainty that he had made the biggest mistake of his life, was setting the stage for what came next. The seeds had been planted and watered. It would soon be time to watch them grow into something beautiful and terrible. By the 4th month, Derek's behavior had escalated from regretful to desperate. The man who had once been too good for me was now consumed with winning me back, and his methods were becoming increasingly erratic. It started with gifts. Expensive flowers delivered to my office with handwritten notes apologizing for his momentary lapse in judgment. Designer jewelry sent to my apartment with cards pleading for another chance. Elaborate gestures meant to prove his sincerity, but which only proved how little he understood about what he had actually done wrong. I returned every gift unopened, which seemed to drive him to even more extreme measures. He started showing up at places he knew I'd be. Not stalking exactly. He was too smart for anything that could be construed as harassment, but convenient appearances that were clearly orchestrated. If I posted about attending a gallery opening, he would casually be there. If I mentioned a new restaurant on social media, he would coincidentally show up for dinner. Each encounter followed the same pattern. He would approach with that boyish grin that had once charmed me, make small talk about work or mutual friends, and then gradually steer the conversation back to us, to what we had, to what we could have again. And each time I would respond with an educated distance. I was never cruel, never dramatic, never gave him anything that could be used as evidence of lingering emotion. I was simply uninterested, pleasant, impassive, cordial, cold. This drove him absolutely insane. The man who had once taken my devotion for granted couldn't understand how I could be so indifferent to his attention. In his narcissistic worldview, my lack of response wasn't proof that I had moved on. It was proof that I was playing hard to get, that I was testing him, that if he tried hard enough, he could win me back. Meanwhile, I was carefully documenting everything. Screenshots of his increasingly desperate text messages, photos of the gifts he sent, logs of every coincidental encounter, not because I planned to use them legally, but because I wanted a complete record of his psychological unraveling. It was fascinating, in a clinical way, to watch someone self-destruct in slow motion. The turning point came when he involved his family. I was working late at the office one evening when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Denise, Derek's mother, and for a moment, my careful composure faltered. Whatever game Derek was playing, his mother didn't deserve to be dragged into it. "Hello, Mrs. Thorne," I answered, genuinely unsure what to expect. "Simone, honey." Her familiar, warm voice came through, though I could hear tension beneath the affection. "I hope you don't mind me calling. Derek gave me your number." Of course, he had given her my number. He probably presented it as a gesture of trust and transparency instead of a manipulation tactic. "I don't mind," I said carefully. "How are you?" "I'm worried, honey. I'm worried about my son." And there was the reason for the call, delivered with the kind of maternal concern that was impossible to fake. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I suspected I knew. "He hasn't been himself since you two. Since things ended between you. He's not eating right, he's lost weight, and all he talks about is how much he misses you, how he made a mistake. I've never seen him like this." I felt a flash of something that might have been guilt, but I suppressed it. Derek's emotional state was a consequence of his own actions, not my responsibility to fix. "I'm sorry to hear he's having a hard time," I said sincerely. "But Mrs. Thorne, surely you understand that I can't—" "I know, honey. I know you don't owe him anything, but I was hoping maybe you could talk to him as a friend. I think if he could just see you, if you could tell him there's no hope, maybe he could start moving on." The plea was reasonable, delivered with genuine motherly love, and it put me in an impossible position. How could I explain to this sweet woman that her son had publicly humiliated me? How could I tell her that the man she had raised to be kind and decent had shown his true colors in the cruelest way possible? "Mrs. Thorne," I said gently, "I don't think that would be helpful for either of us. Some relationships end in ways that make friendship impossible." "Did he hurt you?" she asked suddenly, her voice sharp with the protective instinct of a mother finally asking the right questions. I hesitated. This was my chance to tell the truth, to explain exactly what her son had done. But something held me back. Maybe it was respect for her, maybe it was strategy, or maybe it was the recognition that destroying her illusions about Derek would serve no purpose except cruelty. "He made choices that showed me who he really was," I said finally. "And those choices made it clear we want different things out of life." It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either. "I see," she said quietly, and I could hear the disappointment in her voice. Not disappointment in me, but the kind of deep sadness a parent feels when they realize their child isn't who they thought they were. "I'm sorry," I added. "I know that's not what you wanted to hear." "No, honey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. This isn't a burden you should have to carry." After hanging up, I sat in my empty office and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine sorrow, not for Derek, not for our relationship, but for the collateral damage that was inevitable when someone showed their true nature. Denise was a good person who loved her son, and she couldn't understand why the woman who once seemed perfect for him now wanted nothing to do with him. But my moment of sadness was brief. I had work to do. 2 days later, Derek's sister Chloe called. "Simone?" Her voice was small, uncertain, younger than her 22 years. "Chloe, hi." How are you, honey? I'm okay, I guess. Look, I know this is weird and I know Mom already called you, but I'm really worried about Derek. What's wrong? I asked, though I suspected I knew. He's been drinking too much, going out all night, missing work sometimes, and he won't stop talking about you, about how he messed everything up, how he needs to find a way for you to forgive him. The drinking was new information, and something shifted in my chest. I had wanted Derek to feel regret, to understand what he'd lost, but I hadn't intended to drive him toward self-destruction. Chloe, I can't help with this. Whatever Derek is going through, he has to work out himself, or maybe with a professional. I know. But Simone, what did he do? He won't tell us exactly what happened, only that he said some things he didn't mean when he was drunk. But it had to be pretty bad for you to cut him off completely, right? You loved him so much. There was a pleading quality to her voice that broke my heart. She was trying to understand how her hero, her brother, had fallen so far, so fast. Some things can't be taken back, I said softly. Some words once spoken change everything. But people make mistakes when they're drunk. People say stupid things. Chloe, I interrupted gently. Alcohol doesn't create thoughts. It just removes the inhibitions that normally keep us from voicing them. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. The line was silent for a long moment. He really hurt you, didn't he? She finally said. Yes, I admitted. I'm sorry. I am so sorry, Simone. I thought maybe if you called and I asked you to give him another chance, you were being a good sister, I told her. You love him and you want to help him. There's nothing wrong with that. But this isn't something you can fix. After Chloe hung up, I realized the fourth phase of my plan had begun without my conscious initiation. Derek's family was starting to ask questions, starting to piece together the truth about what kind of man their beloved son and brother really was. I hadn't orchestrated their growing disillusionment, but I could certainly guide it. The confrontation I had been building toward came sooner than expected, triggered by an event I couldn't have planned, but which I was perfectly positioned to exploit. It was a Saturday night, and I was having dinner with Julian Vance and several other colleagues at a high-end restaurant downtown. What had started as a working dinner to discuss a major client pitch had turned into a more relaxed evening, and I was genuinely enjoying myself when I spotted a familiar figure at the bar. Derek was there with Marcus and Sean, and by their body language and flushed faces, they had been drinking for quite a while. I watched them for a moment, noticing the way Derek kept scanning the restaurant, likely hoping to spot me, or at least someone who might know where I was on a Saturday night. When our eyes met across the room, I saw his face light up with a mixture of hope and determination that I recognized well. He was going to approach our table. He was going to make some grand gesture, probably fueled by liquid courage and the encouragement of his equally intoxicated friends. Perfect. I excused myself from the table and intercepted him halfway across the restaurant. Derek, I said quietly, you're drunk. Go home. Simone, he said, louder than necessary, drawing the attention of nearby diners. I was hoping to see you tonight. This is perfect. No, it's not perfect. It's embarrassing. You're making a scene. I don't care, he said, swaying slightly. I need to talk to you. I need to tell you something. Behind him, I could see Marcus and Sean watching with the kind of anticipation that suggested they had been egging this confrontation on all night. There is nothing you need to tell me, I said firmly, and certainly nothing that can't wait until you're sober. But there is, he insisted, grabbing my arm. I need to tell you that I love you. I need to tell you that I was wrong, that I was stupid, that I can't live without you. His voice was getting louder, and I could see other diners beginning to turn and look. At my table, Julian and the others were watching with expressions of concern and curiosity. Derek, you're drunk and you are causing a scene. Let go of my arm. I won't let go, he said, tightening his grip. Not until you listen to me. Not until you give me another chance. And there was the moment I had been waiting for. Derek, drunk and desperate, holding me against my will in a crowded restaurant while demanding things he wasn't entitled to. The perfect display of his true character to an audience that included my professional colleagues and dozens of strangers. "Let go of me," I said again, my voice ringing clearly in the restaurant's suddenly quiet dining room. "Just listen to me," he pleaded, oblivious to the scene he was creating. I know I said things that hurt you, but I was drunk, and I didn't mean it. You have to know I didn't mean it." Finally. He was finally acknowledging what he had done, even if his acknowledgement was cloaked in excuses and self-pity. "You didn't mean it?" I repeated loud enough for everyone in the immediate vicinity to hear. "You didn't mean it when you told your friends that if I was prettier, you might marry me? You didn't mean it when you laughed at me, when you encouraged them to mock me?" The restaurant had gone completely silent now. All eyes were on us, all ears straining to hear this public drama unfold. Derek's face went white as he realized what he had just revealed. "Simone, you're taking it out of context. You're making it sound worse than it was." "Am I?" I asked, pulling my arm free from his grasp with a sharp motion that probably looked more violent than it was. "Am I making it sound worse than sitting in a crowded bar while the man I loved explained to his friends why I wasn't attractive enough to marry? Am I exaggerating the way you all laughed when I walked away?" A woman at a nearby table gasped audibly. I could see Julian half rising from his chair, likely preparing to intervene if necessary. "That wasn't it," Derek said desperately. "You were drunk too. You don't remember it, right?" But I wasn't drunk. I was stone cold sober, and my memory is perfect. I remember it exactly right, I said, my voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that made people believe every word. I remember every laugh, every cruel comment, every moment of humiliation, and I remember thinking that if this is how the man I love treats me, when he thinks I can't fight back, what does that say about who he really is? The audience was completely on my side now. I could see it in their faces, the way they looked at Derek with disgust and at me with sympathy and admiration. A beautiful woman being publicly degraded by a drunken ex-boyfriend who couldn't accept she had moved on. It was a narrative they could all understand and root for. "That's not me," Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You know that's not me, Simone." "Actually," I said, stepping back to put more distance between us, "I think that's exactly who you are. I think the man who mocked me in front of his friends is the real Derek Thorne. Everything else was just an act." I could see Marcus and Sean approaching from the bar, likely realizing their friend was drowning and needed rescuing. But it was too late. The damage was done. "Sir," a new voice cut in. It was the restaurant manager, summoned by the commotion. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "This is between me and my girlfriend," Derek said, turning to the manager with belligerent confusion. "I am not your girlfriend," I said clearly. "I haven't been your girlfriend for 4 months, and I never will be again." The finality in my voice seemed to penetrate his alcohol-soaked brain. I saw the hope drain from his eyes, replaced by something harder and more desperate. "You can't mean that," he said. "After everything we had together, after 5 years, you can't just throw it all away over one stupid night." "I didn't throw it away," I countered. "You did. The night you decided that humiliating me in front of your friends was more important than protecting the heart I had given you." The restaurant manager was joined by a security guard, and I could see this was about to escalate in ways that would only make Derek look worse. "Go home, Derek," I said, not with pity. "Sleep it off, and then maybe think about the kind of man you want to be, because the man standing here right now isn't someone anyone should love." As security escorted him and his friends toward the exit, I stood there in the center of the restaurant with all eyes still on me. I probably should have felt embarrassed by the public nature of the confrontation, but instead, I felt something close to relief. The truth had finally come out, witnessed by dozens of people who would remember this night and spread the story. By tomorrow, everyone would know that Derek Thorne was the kind of man who publicly humiliated his girlfriend and then couldn't understand why she left him. Julian appeared at my side, his face filled with concern and barely contained anger. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine," I said. And I meant it, though I think I'd like to go home. As he helped me gather my things and walked me out of the restaurant, I caught my reflection in one of the windows. The woman staring back had color in her cheeks and fire in her eyes. She looked like someone who had just won a battle she'd been fighting for months. She looked like someone who was finally ready for the war to be over. The restaurant incident created exactly the ripple effect I had hoped for, but its fallout traveled further and deeper than even I had anticipated. Within 24 hours, the story had spread through our mutual social circles like wildfire, each retelling adding details and commentary that painted Derek in an increasingly unfavorable light. Sarah called me Sunday morning, her voice filled with shock and sympathy. "Simone, I just heard about last night. Are you okay? I can't believe Derek would do something like that." "I'm fine," I assured her. "But Sarah, what you heard last night wasn't the first time. That was really how our relationship was toward the end. That's why I left him." The strategic revelation hit its mark. Sarah had always liked Derek. She had always thought he was charming and funny. Now, she was reevaluating every interaction she had ever witnessed between us, looking for signs she had missed. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I feel so stupid. I actually encouraged you to get back with him. I thought he was heartbroken." "He's not heartbroken," I said softly. "He's ashamed. He's angry that I moved on instead of waiting for him to decide I was worth loving. There's a difference." By Monday, the story had reached my workplace, though in a version that was even more favorable to me. According to the office gossip, I had been publicly harassed by a drunken ex-boyfriend who couldn't accept my rejection, and I had handled the situation with grace and dignity. Julian stopped by my office first thing Monday morning. "I wanted to check on you," he said, closing the door behind him, "and apologize for not stepping in sooner. I should have acted the moment he grabbed your arm." "It wasn't necessary," I said. "I can handle myself." "Clearly," he said with a slight smile. "But Simone, if you're worried about any kind of continued harassment, the firm has resources. We can help with restraining orders, security measures, whatever you need." The offer was both professional and personal, and I was genuinely touched by his concern. In another life, under other circumstances, I might have been interested in exploring whatever was developing between us, but I still had work to finish. "I don't think that will be necessary," I said. "But thank you for everything." Tuesday brought the first crack in Derek's family foundation. Chloe called me, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and betrayal. "Is it true?" she demanded, without preamble. "Derek, did he really say those things to you in front of people?" I could have lied. I could have softened the truth to protect her feelings. But Chloe was 22, old enough to understand that the people we love are capable of disappointing us in profound ways. "Yes," I said simply. "It's true." The sound she made was somewhere between a sob and a curse. "I can't believe it. I can't believe he's been trying to get you to forgive him when he did that to you." "Chloe, you were being a good sister. You love him, and you wanted to help. There's nothing wrong with that." "But there is something wrong with him, isn't there?" she said, and I could hear the painful process of disillusionment in her voice. "This isn't the first time, is it? He's always been like this, and I just never wanted to see it." I didn't answer directly, but my silence was answer enough. "I'm so sorry, Simone. I'm so sorry for what he did to you, and I'm sorry for pushing you to give him another chance." "If you had known, you would have done the same," I said, "because you're a kind person who believes in redemption and second chances. Don't let his failures make you cynical." Wednesday brought the call I had been waiting for. Denise, crying. "Simone, honey, I heard about the restaurant and Chloe told me. She told me what Derek really did to you." Her voice was broken in a way that tightened my chest with unexpected emotion. "I raised him better than that," she continued. "I don't know where I went wrong, but I raised him to respect women, to be kind, to be decent. I don't understand how he could do such a thing." "Mrs. Thorne," I said softly, "this isn't your fault. You raised him to be better. Sometimes people choose to ignore what they've been taught. I keep thinking about all the times you came to Sunday dinner, all the times you helped me in the kitchen, all the times you listened to Chloe talk about her problems. You were like a daughter to me, and he threw that away. For what? To impress his friends?" The pain in her voice was real and deep, and for the first time in months, I felt genuine regret for the collateral damage my vengeance had caused. "I don't blame you," I told her. "I don't blame Chloe. This is between Derek and me." "But it's not just between you and him anymore, is it?" she said, with a clarity that surprised me. "He's made it everyone's business, and now we all have to live with knowing what kind of man he really is." Thursday brought the most interesting development yet, a call from Marcus Tate. "Simone," his voice was carefully neutral, "I think we need to talk." "We do?" I asked, genuinely curious about what he could possibly want to say to me. "About what happened at the restaurant? About other things?" "I'm listening." "Look, I know you're mad about that night at the Rusty Anchor. I know we all said things we shouldn't have, but this has gone too far. Derek is unraveling, and you're destroying his reputation over something that happened months ago." The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, after everything, he was trying to make me the villain in this story. "I'm not destroying anything," I said calmly. "I'm simply telling the truth when people ask. Derek destroyed his own reputation the night he chose to mock me in public. But you're making it sound worse than it was. You're acting like we attacked you or something. We were just drunk guys saying dumb stuff. It didn't mean anything." "It meant something to me," I countered, "and it should have meant something to Derek. The fact that neither of you understood, that tells me everything I need to know about what kind of men you are. Come on, Simone, you're a smart woman. You know how guys talk when they're drinking. You know we didn't really mean any of that." This was my opportunity to educate him, to explain exactly why his dismissal of their cruelty was part of the problem, but I was past the need to change minds or seek understanding from men like Marcus. "Here's what I know," I said instead. "I know that when people show you who they really are, you should believe them. And that night, all three of you showed me exactly who you are. The fact that you can't understand why that matters tells me everything I need to know." "So what? You're never going to forgive him? You're going to hold this grudge forever?" "This isn't about forgiveness, Marcus. This is about consequences. Derek made choices, and now he has to live with the results of those choices, just like I had to live with the result of loving someone who thought I wasn't good enough for him." The conversation ended shortly after, with Marcus muttering something about women being impossible to please and hanging up, but I could tell by his tone that the solidarity between the three friends was beginning to fracture. When things got tough, men like Marcus and Sean would abandon Derek to save themselves. Friday brought the culmination of everything I had been working toward. Derek, alone and sober, standing outside my apartment building at 7 in the morning. I saw him from my window as I got ready for work. He looked awful, unshaven, disheveled, with the sunken-eyed appearance of someone who hadn't slept well. He was just standing there, staring up at my building, likely gathering the courage for whatever final gesture he was planning. Part of me wanted to ignore him, sneak out the back entrance, and avoid the confrontation altogether, but I realized that would be cowardice on my part. If this was going to end, it needed to end properly. I went downstairs and met him on the sidewalk. "Hello, Derek." He turned to me, and I was surprised by how much he had changed in just a few days since the restaurant. He looked years older, diminished in some fundamental way. "Simone," he said, his voice husky, "thank you for coming down. I wasn't sure you would." "What do you want?" "I want to apologize, a real apology, not the half-excuses I've been giving. I want to tell you that I understand what I did wrong, and I want to ask you if there's any way, any possibility—" "There isn't," I said, before he could finish. "There is no possibility of reconciliation, Derek. That died the night you chose to humiliate me for entertainment." "But I love you," he said, and now there were tears in his eyes. "I know I didn't show it right. I know I took you for granted, but I love you. I always have." "No," I said firmly. "You loved having me. You loved having someone devoted to you, someone who made you feel important and desired. But you didn't love me because love protects. Love honors. Love doesn't invite an audience to witness someone's destruction." He was crying openly and unashamedly now, and I felt something twist in my chest. Something that might have been the last remnants of the love I once felt for him. "I know," he whispered. "I know I failed you. I know I was cruel and selfish and stupid. But people can change, Simone. I can change. I can be better." "Maybe you can," I said. And I meant it. "Maybe someday you will learn to love someone correctly, to treat them with the respect they deserve. But that person isn't going to be me." "Why not?" he asked desperately. "Why can't it be you? Who knows me better? Who could help me be better?" And there was the final, fatal reveal of his character. Even in his moment of supposed enlightenment, he was asking me to take responsibility for his growth, to sacrifice my own healing to help him become the man he should have been all along. "Because I'm not your rehab project," I said. "I'm not responsible for teaching you how to be decent. That's a job you have to do yourself." "But I don't know how," he said, and the admission was both heartbreaking and infuriating. "I don't know how to be better without you." "Then figure it out," I countered, the same way I had to figure out how to rebuild my self-esteem after you shattered it, the same way I had to learn to trust my own judgment again after you made me question everything I thought I knew about love. I could see him struggling with the concept that his emotional growth wasn't my responsibility, that love didn't mean endless forgiveness for repeated cruelty. "I'm asking for mercy," he said finally. "I'm asking for one more chance to prove I can love you the way you deserve. And I'm telling you that some chances, once lost, don't come back," I replied. "Certain trust, once broken, can't be repaired. You had 5 years to love me correctly, Derek. 5 years to choose kindness over cruelty, respect over humiliation, privacy over public spectacle. You chose differently every time." "That's not true," he protested. "We had good times. We were happy." "We had moments," I corrected. "Moments in between your casual cruelties, your subtle put-downs, your constant suggestions about how I could be better, prettier, more worthy of your affection. I was happy because I didn't understand that love wasn't supposed to feel like a constant audition." The words hit him like physical blows. I could see him recognizing the truth of what I was saying, recalling instances where he had belittled me in ways that seemed harmless at the time. "I didn't know," he said weakly. "You didn't want to know," I countered, "because knowing would have required you to change, and changing is hard. It was easier to condition me to accept less than I deserved." We stood there in the morning light, two people who had once planned a future together, now separated by a chasm of pain and understanding that couldn't be bridged. "So this is it?" he asked. "This is really the end?" "This is the end," I confirmed. "And Derek, don't contact me again. Don't send gifts. Don't show up at places I'll be. Don't ask mutual friends to intervene on your behalf. Let me move on with my life." "And what if I can't?" he asked. And there was something desperate and slightly threatening in his tone. "What if I can't just let you go?" For the first time since I'd come downstairs, I felt a flash of something akin to fear, but it was quickly replaced by a cold anger that surprised me with its intensity. "Then you will learn the difference between losing someone because of your own choices and losing someone because of consequences you can't control," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried more threat than any yell. "Because if you continue to harass me, if you continue to make my life difficult, I will make sure everyone who matters in your world knows exactly what kind of man you are. Your coworkers, your clients, your extended family, every woman you might want to date. They will all know the story of how Derek Thorne publicly humiliated the woman who loved him." The threat was clear, and judging by the way his face paled, it was effective. "You wouldn't," he said. "Try me," I replied. "I rebuilt myself once after your cruelty. I am stronger now than I was then, but you are weaker, more desperate, more reliant on the opinions of others for your self-worth. So ask yourself, in a war of attrition, who do you think would win?" He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him recognizing that the woman standing before him wasn't the same person he had destroyed at the Rusty Anchor. This version of me was harder, smarter, more ruthless. This version of me had learned to protect herself by any means necessary. "I understand," he said quietly. "Good." I turned to walk back to my building. Then I stopped. "Derek, for what it's worth, I hope you learn how to be better. Not for me, but for you, and for whoever you love next." As I climbed the stairs back to my apartment, I heard him call my name one last time. "Simone!" I didn't turn around, but I paused. "I really did love you," he said. "No matter how badly I showed it, no matter how much I failed at it, I loved you." "I know," I said without looking back. "That's what makes this so tragic." 6 months later, I'm sitting in my corner office at Sterling & Associates, reviewing the final details of a campaign that will likely earn me another promotion. The afternoon sun streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the awards on my walls and the fresh flowers on my desk. Flowers I bought for myself, because I've learned the importance of not waiting for someone else to celebrate my accomplishments. I am not the woman I was a year ago. That woman believed love meant settling for less than she deserved, that loyalty meant enduring humiliation, that forgiveness meant enabling cruelty. That woman thought her value was determined by someone else's opinion of her looks, her worth measured by another's willingness to claim her. This woman knows better. I've learned that true strength isn't the ability to endure pain, it's the wisdom to refuse to accept it. I've learned that self-respect isn't something you lose and then find again. It's something you choose to uphold every single day with every decision you make about what you will and won't tolerate. I've learned that revenge, executed correctly, isn't about causing pain. It's about allowing people to experience the natural consequences of their choices. Derek kept his word. He hasn't contacted me since that morning outside my apartment. According to mutual friends, he is now in therapy, working on what Sarah delicately describes as some personal issues. His relationship with his family has improved, though it took months of honest conversations and genuine remorse on his part. Marcus and Sean, predictably, distanced themselves from him once his behavior began to reflect poorly on them. Friends of convenience rarely survive the storms they help create. I don't feel sorry for any of them. I do feel proud of myself, proud of how I handled his cruelty, proud of how I rebuilt my life, proud of the woman I've become. I am not bitter or broken or defined by what they did to me. I am stronger, wiser, and more discerning about who I allow into my life and how I allow them to treat me. I've been dating Julian for 3 months now. He is kind, respectful, and seems to genuinely appreciate the woman I am instead of wishing I were someone else. When he compliments my looks, it's in addition to praising my intelligence, my humor, my achievements. When he introduces me to people, he talks about my work, my accomplishments, my thoughts on various subjects. He treats me like a complete person rather than an ornamental accessory to his life. It's a revelation to be with someone who doesn't see your love as a commodity to be taken for granted or a prize to be won through manipulation. Julian earns my affection every day with his words and actions, just as I earn his. This is what healthy love looks like, I realize. This is what I should have demanded all along. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd had the self-respect at 21 that I have now. Would I have recognized Derek's subtle manipulations soon enough to walk away? Would I have demanded better treatment from the start? Would I have saved myself years of conditioning and months of recovery? But those questions are useless now. I can't change the past, but I can use it to inform my future. I can let it make me wiser instead of bitter, stronger instead of broken. My phone buzzes with a text from Julian. Still on for dinner tonight? I booked that new place you wanted to try. I smile as I type the response. Absolutely. Can't wait to see you. This is what it feels like to be chosen by someone who actually knows your worth. This is what it feels like to be loved correctly. The old Simone might have felt guilty for her happiness. She might have wondered if she deserved it after what she put Derek through. But the woman I am now understands that taking care of yourself isn't cruelty. It's necessity. That demanding respect isn't selfish. It's healthy. That walking away from people who belittle you isn't giving up. It's growing up. I have learned that some people come into your life to teach you what love is, and others come to teach you what it is not. Derek taught me what it is not, and in doing so, he prepared me to recognize and appreciate what it is. For that, in some twisted way, I'm almost grateful. Almost. As the sun sets over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I gather my things and prepare to leave the office. I have dinner with a man who loves me correctly, friends who respect me completely, and a career that challenges and fulfills me. I have a life that I built from the ashes of someone else's cruelty, and it is beautiful. I am enough. I always have been enough, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve a place in my story. The woman I am now knows that with absolute certainty, and she will never forget it. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.